Dear Trayvon, I heard you got shot. That's life. Maybe not for you because you're dead, right? Well, I'm sorry, but maybe it was best. Because according to America, by the age of 25, you would have been in jail or dead, so maybe it just so happened that you see an early death. Neighborhood watch. He was just doing his job, so you really can't blame him. I mean, you did look intimidating with your hoodie, Skittles, and iced tea that could have been mistaken for anything, like a gun. But obviously, you didn't have one. But if you did, maybe you would have used it. And within 24 hours, been sentenced and prosecuted, unlike Zimmerman, who fired the shots that put your body in the box because of the color of skin you were in. Who's still on the same block where you got shot, still on the neighborhood watch, peeking out his window looking for his next victim to put a bullet in. And all we can do is watch the seconds drift off the clock, waiting on the judicial system, but we know you won't win. And it hurts. We know your spirit's in the clouds, but your body's in the dirt. And the fact that you won't see justice only makes the feeling worse. We're so proud of being black, but they make black feel like a curse, but we fight through it. Because if life was always for the better, what would it really be worth? This is a letter of remorse, not for your life, but for its course. A bullet hit you full force and left your body a corpse, cut all your dreams short and turn your life into a memory. This American life we live isn't all that it pretends to be, and it's driving me insane. They say this is the land of the free and the home of the brave, but when I look around, I can't say I see the same. I guess Obama did get elected twice, but we still seeking change. I see a world of slaves, but I don't see an escape. They got shackles on our ankles and harnesses on our chest, handcuffs around our wrists, attached to leashes around our necks. We're just crabs in a bucket, and they pick who's next, and that melting pot is hot. It don't matter if you hold your breath. Trayvon, nothing will ever justify your early death. But your spirit is free. You're no longer a slave. Your soul is at rest. May you rest in peace. With love, Stephen Martinez. Thank you.
For those who were here last week, when you hear this song, you know what time it is. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Choppin' It Up, episode 2. Time to flip a switch. Here we are, we're at the same game. We're back at it again. Bringing you guys those tough talks. That conversation that we all need to have. First episode, we graced you with some general stats, some general perspectives, talking about what we need to do in order to start the conversation, in order to get people to come to the table, and what we need to think about, what perspectives we need to keep in mind, what we need to value, what will really be a fruitful conversation. This episode, we're going to get a little personal. That's what it is. We're going to be telling our stories. We're going to be talking about our experiences, how we internalize things, how we go through society thinking about each and every encounter. Maybe with the police, maybe with peers, maybe with strangers that we encounter on the street. But you guys had a lot of questions. You guys were real active in the chat. And for that, we'd like to say thank you. A huge thank you. So we want to answer your questions. We took a couple. We took about 3, 4, I think 3. And my hosts over here, they're going to handle those. They're going to talk about those. They're going to spit. They're going to chop it up. That's what we do.
You already know.
So let's cut the music, man. Let's cut the music. It's really time to get into the show.
Louses, that transition, man, always gets me. So clean, bro. So clean.
Welcome to the conversation.
Yep, the continuing of the conversation. So we're going to address these questions right now. So I think I'll kick it off to the man on my right.
Yo, what's up, guys? Again, thank you so much for coming through. We always appreciate it. So one of the questions someone had in chat was, and I think Owen kind of answered like part of it last time, but it was regarding systemic racism and whether or not we think that it's going to be pretty much abolished in our lifetime. So it's important first to understand what systemic racism is. It doesn't necessarily encompass an individual's ideals and like thoughts about race and ethnicity and all of that. It's more so like the structure that we live in, right? So when we talk about systemic racism, we're talking about, you know, the wealth gap that's present, in our country, the employment gap, the educational system, the criminal justice system. So it's everything that the society that we live in is composed of, right? So the reason I bring this up is because it's very difficult in my mind to completely terminate that in our lifetime, because it's not dependent on a person or a specific group of persons, I should say. But it's more so like the structure of the society that we live in. So in my opinion, the way that we can combat that starts from the bottom up, right? So we have to first, and I think Feek, you kind of mentioned that a little bit um, last week. We have to first start thinking about ways that we can make the problem, um, like make people aware of the problem, right? Like everyone has an
Yes,
individual
sir.
responsibility to kind of understand the problem at hand and ways that they can stop themselves from, the implicit racism or the biases that they have. And then if we work towards that first, I think that'll kind of work its way up into maybe changing the structures that we live in. Because obviously it's not right when uh 50% of black people that are in preschool, for example, get suspended like right off the bat. Or like when it comes to employment, there's a 50% higher chance that a white person gets the job over a black person when their applications are identical. These racial inequalities go on and on, from housing, redlining back in the day, to the criminal justice system. All of that I feel like will change only when we take like a bottom up approach and kind of change our mentalities. And for me, that's something that is definitely possible, but just takes a long time to kind of accomplish. So, to answer that question, I am a bit of an optimist. I definitely do hope that in our lifetime things change, but just figuring how drastic a change would need to happen for it to be completely abolished, I think it'll take probably a couple of generations before we completely see a shift in that. So yeah, those are my personal thoughts on whether or not it'll be abolished in our lifetime.
Yeah, to go with that real quick, I agree. I feel like maybe to answer the question directly, maybe systemic racism won't end in my lifetime, but I'm gonna remain optimistic. I appreciate all the efforts made, by people of different backgrounds, of different colors, uniting to raise awareness for the issues and the plight of people of color. Is a good sign, and it's something I probably haven't seen in my lifetime. So I hope to be optimistic, but a lot of change needs to be done. A lot of change needs to happen. We're talking about hundreds of years of a certain type of thinking, of a certain type of a certain idealism. So I feel maybe I won't live to see systemic racism end, but we can hope at least. We can hope and be proud of the efforts that are being made right now, especially 2020, the past couple of months. It's been a lot of support, a lot of awareness made around.
Yeah.
Y'all said it well enough. I got nothing on that.
There you go.
So then I think it's time to get into the next question. I believe a question was asked about how police brutality and the Black Lives Matter movement and everything like that more so centralizes on male bodies. And there's a lot of attention to male bodies. We know the George Floyd killing, Ahmaud Arbery,
Mhm.
Tamir Rice. You can list all the names, Trayvon Martin, as we saw in that piece from Steve Martinez. Shout outs to him. Why do we think that is? I know that was a question that we were going to tackle.
I mean, to be honest, there is sort of a hierarchy, right, in terms of advantages and disadvantages when it comes to people. And although black people fall at the very bottom, in terms of opportunity and advantages, um, black women are the absolute bottom, because not only do they have to deal with racism, they also have to deal with people being sexist, there's a whole another level of disadvantages that come with that. And I think we're actually having uh, a female speaker later on. I'd rather kind of hear more about her perspective and her personal experiences because, I can't relate to what she's gone through. So I'm gonna just, defer to her and see what life has been like for her to see if maybe it resonates with you guys a little bit more.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, I could say on that. Again, it's not something I can, give an experience of, but I'm sure, at least one of our speakers later will be able to do so. Um, the only thing I could say is as to why, I think the original question was, why is there so much focus on the black male in our culture rather than, you know, um, on black people as a whole or black and brown people? And one of those comes from one of the resources that I've found was really interesting to me. Um, Came about through Michelle Alexander's New Jim Crow and just reading on the internet about it. Um, and it was essentially for every free 100 black women across the country, there are 83 free black men. Um, so that 1.5 million incarcerated black men really takes a toll in a way that it hasn't with women. Um, and I think that that's what's causing this big dissonance. Just in the numbers strictly, in the way that police are racially driven against the black male. And I think that tends to take some of the focus off of the difficulties that women face. But yeah, I'd throw that number out there. Just maybe some reasoning behind it, not to say anything about the experience of either population.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like our speaker that we're going to be having on in about 20 minutes or so, we'll definitely be able to touch on that and kind of provide a little bit more insight as to why we may see that sort of disconnect or why we see that dissonance, as you had mentioned. But you had mentioned an interesting concept, the concept of mass incarceration. I know you guys taking some courses on that, and it was kind of at the forefront at some of our arguments and discussions last week. So I know Neo had wanted to say a few things on that. So I'm gonna give him the floor.
Yeah, I mentioned mass incarceration yesterday and just criminalization of a lot of, you know, conditions or actions taken upon in communities that, house a lot of people of color, uh, primarily like Black people and Latinos. Um, I did some research, just to, prepare myself on, some of the stats and some of the things that are going on in this country. And the research revealed to me a few things. There's effects of mass incarceration on a few levels. Effects during pretrial before people are even sentenced. Effects during you know post serving their time after incarceration, and even effects during sentencing. There's a wild stat that I saw recently that said that in 2016, Black Americans comprised 20%, 27% of all individual arrests in the US, which was double of their share of total population in the entire country. It's only 13% of African Americans in the United States, yet they represent 27% of those incarcerated in the country. There's a huge disparity between that, and you can see that even in Black youth. Black youth accounted for 35% of juvenile arrests, but they only represented 15% of all children in the country. Obviously, this is a product of urban poverty, which is a common issue for people of color, African Americans specifically, and it contributes to a lot of the increased likelihood of Black people committing certain violent and property crimes. Um, I mentioned this a little bit last week in terms of the rise of mass incarceration and the the way it leads to more interactions between African Americans and with the police, and how that just raises the odds of people ending up in the legal system, ending up arrested, ending up in jails. And what's interesting is all races in the country roughly commit, an equal rate of crimes in terms of drug offenses and, offenses that people of color are usually nabbed for. Um, one reason for one reason for why, probably you see a lot more people of color nabbed for drug offenses is probably because a lot of the police and a lot of the people in power are, servicing areas in which there's an abundance of people of color, a lot of black people in their communities, and in the inner city. um, I also learned that through my research that, there were a lot of uh, laws, a lot of legislation passed that, I don't know if it was intentional, but it inadvertently targeted, African American communities, including the war on drugs, which we saw early '80s, '90s, the broken windows policy, stop and frisk, as you see in New York. The broken window policy, the theory, just says that states that see crime as an issue in their state, they encourage further, policing of minor crimes such as like vandalism, loitering, public drinking, jaywalking, things like that. And they use this theory to have police officers come out to those communities and tighten up security, tighten up enforcement of the law, and they arrest and detain people that commit petty crimes, in order to in order to stop the greater crimes, to prevent, more serious crimes, more serious felonies. The issue with this is that, the crimes that they're targeting are crimes that you witness and that you experience in these inner city communities, in these communities with a lot of people of color. Like I said, vandalism, loitering,
Mm-hmm.
fare evasion. These are things that, people in the communities aren't, uh, they don't have the luxury of uh, infrastructure or resources that allow them to, climb economic ladders,
Yep.
equally to other people.
Yeah.
They have to resort to selling drugs or sex work or, theft in order to, get money on the table, put money on the table, to pay their bills, to provide for their families. And, it just seems counterproductive to me that, we're targeting these specific crimes that you don't see in the suburbs, you don't see in more rural areas. They don't see these crimes occurring in those areas, and we're targeting those and we're nabbing those guys, and we're just logging guys into the legal system, and the legal system, ultimately ends up screwing these guys in the long run, especially for repeated offenses, especially for more serious offenses.
Mm.
And you can see that with sentencing, you can see that with pre-trials, you can see that, once you get out of prison, you're not afforded the same luxuries as a regular citizen of the United States. It's hard for you to vote. It's hard for you to secure public government assistance. It's hard for you to secure housing. It's hard for you to afford the bare benefits, of a citizen of the United States. And, we're not addressing the reason why it's so disproportionately affecting people of color. And
Right.
that's a real issue. Those people aren't able to recover. They aren't able to secure loans. They aren't able to, secure the job that will, help them move themselves out of whatever community, whatever environment, is not not optimal for their growth, not optimal for their, for whatever status it is that they're aiming for. So, the mass incarceration in general, to me, it seems like it's just keeping people in a state of per, in a state of perpetual, sadness. Like you can't maneuver out of it, you can't break the cycle. If these rules are in play, more often than not, a lot of people, resort to whatever means they need to, secure uh, money, secure, some type of foundation for their family, whether that's drugs, whatever. They resort to whatever these crimes are, and that's all they know. That's all they see. They don't see these opportunities that are available for them because it's not advertised, it's not promoted. We don't put enough stock, we don't put enough money into those avenues, those pathways, those roads for these people.
Right.
And it just it's like this whole theory of mass incarceration sucks you in. It's like a black hole. You can never get out. It's unfortunate. But
I'm gonna say something on that.
Yeah, I mean, you can go ahead, bro. You can go
ahead. Yeah. So just like Owen was saying, there are multiple steps to this. This is something that you don't see, just like I'm a white guy walking down the street, and it's hard to put yourself in the place of somebody who gets trapped in this system. So just I thought it important to like lay out a couple of the steps that can lead to this, and maybe it can offer some sort of perspective for people. First, it's pretty well known that racial profiling is not explicitly allowed by the police, right? Like a police officer can't go up and charge someone because they say they're black, and therefore that means they're more likely to sell drugs. However, they are explicitly allowed to profile based off non-explicit reasons. They can say, and this started with the war on drugs, they can look at you and say, well, this man looked too calm, or he was acting too calm, he looked too nervous, he looked too casual, too fancily dressed. You can pull anything out of whatever orifice you want, and these things they're allowed. This is it's an avenue for people to be drawn into this long circular pattern. Second, when we get to the justice system itself, sadly, it's widely thought that judges hold the power within the courtroom, and that's not the case. Realistically, prosecutors are the ones who hold the power in the courtroom. They get to decide on sentencing. They're allowed to overcharge, so you can throw extra charges at an accused person and say, look, I'm going to accuse you of this and this and that, and therefore if you are found guilty, you're going to serve 70 years instead of a charge that would only merit 10 years. This leads a lot of Black people especially to make plea bargains, and therefore they're pulled into the justice system, and you end up not being able to find your way out. Third is the actual sentence. You spend many years in prison. That's easy enough. That makes sense to everybody. Lastly is after sentencing. So this is really where mass incarceration models and mirrors the Jim Crow laws. Felons can't vote. There's discrimination legally for housing once you are removed from prison if you're a felon. Ban the box is a movement looking to restrict the ability to force people to say they were a felon before offering them a job or before taking their interview for a job. You have to share your incarceration history like that. PO fees can keep people from being able to pay rent with their minimum wage jobs that they're able to get coming out of incarceration. It's this circular system that, when you can't pay your rent because you have to pay for your parole officer or you have to pay for drug screening, whatever it is, you're pulled back in. You can't pay this money, you're brought back to prison. And it's an insidious problem. And it's something that won't go away unless the majority of people in this country recognize it for what it is. And yeah, that real circular system is really, it's insidious in the way that it brings back people for repeat offenses. It's the reason that Candace Owens was saying, I have no backing of George Floyd because he was a repeat offender. But once you're in that system, it's really difficult for you to find a way out, and it traps people, and it's a sad reality. But feel free to reach out I'm sure to any of us, if you really want details on it, it's a really important subject.
Unfortunate, bro.
Yeah, and so you guys did a great job outlining kind of the consequences that go hand in hand with, being convicted. So just think about this. 1 in every 3 black people who are born are going to end up in prison at least once in their lifetime versus 1 in 14 black people. So just think about what they all said and the consequences that you get from that, and then think about that stat. 1 in every 3. So as soon as you're born, there's a 33% chance that you're going to end up in jail, and there's a 33% chance that you're going to have to climb up from those consequences. So to me, that's a very striking stat. It's very telling how your freedom is almost stripped away from you upon birth. Like that's crazy. So yeah, that's all
Sure.
I have to say about that. It's damning, honestly.
So what you can say about that?
Oh, it's just really tough to see how the system is not set up for a certain group of people. And I mean, like we said last week, we're all equal. No one is better than anyone in terms of their humanity. So why is it that we can't force this change? Why is it that we have to live in a society like this? I think these are the gripping questions that we need to internalize and really think long and hard about the answers to it. Um, so we're gonna get a little personal pretty soon. We also have our call-ins and everything like that. We have our speaker to discuss the female perspective, the black female perspective, even more importantly. Um, so let's get personal, guys. How about that? So I'll start off. We'll just talk about how we identify really quick. So I identify as a black male who luckily has not faced much explicit, overt racism, I would say. And that's not to say that it hasn't happened and I just didn't realize it. Maybe I'm just naive. Maybe I just try to see the good in people and everything like that. But I would like to say that I haven't been put in a situation similar to one of our callers last week who said they had a gun pulled on them at the age of 17. If I had that happen to me, I don't know what I would even think, how I would perceive the police, how I'd even perceive the general surroundings. You're in your own neighborhood and a gun is pulled on you. But that just sets the table for what I will share with you guys a little bit later. I'll go to my other hosts so they can kind of give you a little taste of their backgrounds.
Yeah. Similarly to Blouses, I've never experienced uh overt or outward racism. Personally, to me, I've never been able to track. Well, that guy was being racist, or he called me the N word, or anything like that. But I can tell you about my feelings, um, and how I felt in certain situations. I'll let the guys after me speak about their experiences on campus and things like that. But um, my freshman year, especially at Holy Cross, I experienced a great deal of uncomfort. I went to a predominantly black Catholic high school. It's kind of rare too, but I went to a predominantly black Catholic high school, and everywhere I looked, there were people that came from the same background as me, that looked like me, that sort of thought like me, that I could relate to, that I could confide in, that I could talk to, and I could assimilate into the community. Stark contrast to college, obviously, where I went to Holy Cross, predominantly white college, Jesuit college, and it took a while for me to adapt, and to assimilate into the community. I'll say this: I was lucky. I had a black roommate. We were friends in high school, and we decided to room. And I had a black roommate every single year of undergrad. But it was still hard. It was hard being the only black guy in class. It was hard, when socially aware topics came up in class, and it seemed like everyone was waiting for me to say something. It was hard when I was met with a dap instead of a high five. Or when I
That's
joined the
crazy, bro.
conversation, we talk about like Lil Wayne's album or something like that, or we talk about basketball because a black guy came, or when I was asked like, "Oh, do you play on the football team?" I know I'm a big guy. I probably should have played for the football team, but like,
Probably would have been
those
nice.
things,
Probably would have been nice too, bro.
yeah, I mean, probably, son. But like, those things, I personally, for me, they didn't affect me as much as what I'm about to talk about. But like those were little things that I noticed as as a young black man, on a college campus. For me, though, the biggest issue, the biggest thing that I fear, and the biggest thing that I notice now as a man in my mid 20s is the conversations I have at home with my parents. I can't just say I want to go outside and walk around the block, because you know obviously the crazy stuff going on, the stuff that happened with Ahmaud Arbery, and like I live in Illinois, and the neighborhood that I live in it's a bunch of subdivisions, but if you look at my backyard, it's just farms, and a lot of people in this area, they carry guns, and the slightest action. Maybe I walk on someone's lawn, or I'm walking early in the morning or at night and I frighten someone, could lead to me losing my life. Maybe someone doesn't recognize me on the block and they call the police and then it becomes an issue. Maybe I don't have my wallet and I can't verify that I live in the neighborhood and they assume that I'm someone trying to rob something or take something. Those are the issues. Those are the issues that I'm worried about, and that I take notice of. Those things are, sure. I'm sure Blouses experiences those. I'm sure Zoldyck experiences those, and even the people in the chat. But those are the conversations that you know I take heed of, and that I see a lot. It's a tough conversation to have. It shouldn't be that way. I should be able to enjoy my surroundings like every other person.
Yeah,
But because of the
basic
climate that
liberty.
we're in, it's kind of rough. It's kind of tough.
It's a basic liberty. It's and saying that we have to play the rules or we have different rules. It's a true tragedy, and we're gonna get into that a little bit later with a little more depth. But we do have a very early call in. As we said before, we have a guest speaker to address one of those issues that we were talking about earlier about that dissonance between black male bodies and black female bodies in terms of police brutality. So we're going to bring her in. And if anyone else wants to join in on the conversation, share their perspective, share a comment, get personal with us, just hit exclamation point call in, exclamation point Discord. It will tell you how to do it. Once again, exclamation point call in, exclamation point Discord. So let's see. I think we have our guest in right now. She might be muted. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Asha, how are
What's
you
up?
doing?
I'm doing good. How are y'all?
Doing great.
We're doing
Doing
fantastic.
good. Just
How
Oh,
are you?
we're doing well. Thank you for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
hmm So, one of the things we were talking about was why is it that we look at issues where black males get into altercations with the police and unfortunately sometimes ultimately end up being killed by the police? Why are those held with such weight? Whereas you have a Breonna Taylor, you have a Sandra Bland, you have those scenarios. What is your take on that, especially as a black female?
Yeah, that's definitely a question that I have been thinking about a lot. Everything going on and have felt frustrated by. And, I think it has a lot to do with what I noticed someone was talking about in the comments earlier, which is, this idea of intersectionality. And as someone who holds multiple identities where um, they're less privileged than their counterparts or are oppressed by those identities, um, the more likely they are to have unheard voices and be invisible, especially in the mainstream. So now, as we're seeing, which doesn't take away from the fact that all these cases in the last few months around Black men who have been victims of police brutality and have been recognized and has sparked this national movement, this national dialogue. That's great, but it is frustrating to see that some similar cases where the victims have been female haven't garnered the same attention or been treated with the same urgency. And I can't help but to think that's because they're women, and that comes with a certain amount of invisibility. And it's even worse for Black trans women.
Yeah.
That's a huge crisis in our country too. So it's certainly we've made a lot of progress, especially in the last few months. But until Black women who are victims of police brutality becomes part of the national narrative, we have a long way to go.
Agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
I have just that was great, by the way. I just am very curious. With everything going on recently, in the last couple of months, um, how do you feel, just generally speaking? Because I know I speak with Owen every day, and a couple of weeks ago, what he said to me was that he felt tired. That he felt exhausted, and to me, that was very telling of the kind of atmosphere that we're living in right now. And I can't even imagine how a Black woman, like, living in this world is feeling. So, I mean, if you don't mind sharing, like, what would be like, how do you feel about everything that's going on?
Yeah, I've gotten asked that question a lot, and my response is always along the same lines: just tired, exhausted. Feeling like we've been fighting for so long, and feeling like on one hand, like it goes up and down, right? Like, so on some days I'm super inspired by all the conversations that are finally being had in more white spaces, and at a more in mainstream media and at a more national level. But at the same time, just feeling like I can't but feel like I was screaming into a void for the past however many years. And it's great that the country has finally woken up, but at the same time, there's like this feeling, this sinking feeling that, like, what if everyone goes back to sleep, and just feeling exhausted by that thought. So it's trying times and it's been hard, but I do have hope, and I think that that's important. So
Amen to that.
Gotcha.
For
Yeah,
real.
100%.
Amen. Yeah.
Amen.
We gotta be optimistic. It's crazy times for real.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, well, thank you so much for your perspective. I think you definitely fill that gap because we can discuss, we can speculate and everything like that. However, we can't tell it from the perspective that you have. You really have a completely different struggle from even Owen and I.
Right.
And it really just shouldn't be that way. We all have to come together as a people and really fight for the equality for all, because if we can't bring our Black sisters up, then how are we going to expect our Black brothers to beat police brutality? Like, if we're not
There it
unified as
is.
a front, then we're fine a losing battle. So
Yeah, that's for
Big
sure. I
facts.
definitely am of the belief that we're not none of us are free until we all are, and
Mm.
that's something that I think about a lot. And yeah, I completely agree.
yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thanks for
sharing.
having me.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you.
All
Yeah.
right, bye.
Alrighty.
That was the
Yeah.
perspective we needed right there.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
That's facts.
Yep.
She was speaking
Plus,
facts.
I gotta do my usual shout out. So like Asha just said, like it's worrisome to think about the conversation stopping here, but that conversation doesn't stop when you're the person being discriminated against, but when you're the person looking from the outside, like it's easy to to move on to the next thing, to become deaf to it. So
Mm-hmm.
to all my white folks out there, just keep the message going, keep talking to each other, keep pushing for legislative changes, keep talking to your kids about it, whatever it is that you can do. Just make that effort, because that's where the change comes. People who are affected by it, they're not stopping this conversation, right? It's us who are making it disappear in the media and online and in conversation. So there's my usual shout out.
There we go.
Oh,
Real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Just to go with what you're talking about, Feek. I'd be remiss to say that like I haven't been really happy about all the support, all the awareness of people like white people not of color, posting and joining people in protests and supporting this cause and raising awareness for this cause. I've never witnessed this in my entire life. Maybe it's because I was ignorant as a child or when I was younger, but like I've never seen so much support from the people we need to help us, push this agenda, push this narrative, push this message, to the masses. And that's ultimately what you hope for. That's what you aim for, because without their help, how much change can we really get done? How much change can we really get across? So, shout outs to everybody who's woke out there, who's aware of what's going on in this world.
Yes.
true. And I was speaking earlier about the whole like start at the bottom. Start from the individual, and we can't start from that if we don't begin by educating ourselves. So um, to reiterate what you said, I also appreciate everyone who's been reposting and such. Um, just because that's where we begin. We can't change the structure unless we change the people in the structure, within the structure. So, yeah, shout out to obviously everyone who's about the cause, because everyone's helping in their own unique way.
Facts.
So,
Of course. All right. Well, once again, big shout out to Asha for coming on and clarifying that, not only for us, but also for the viewers. I know that was a major question that everyone had last week. So, yeah, I think it's that time. We got to get personal. Once again, we're back on that mode. So I'm going to leave it to my other two hosts who haven't said anything. They can talk about how they identify if they would like, or they can defer. Balls in your
then I'm
court.
gonna go ahead and start that. So I'm Dominican, as most of you in the chat probably know, and I was born and raised in the Bronx. Uh, the Bronx is the poorest section of New York. The poorest borough in New York. But I obviously love it. It's my home. It's where I've met a lot of my friends. Um, I mean, you guys can relate. When you call something someplace your home, it resonates with you, no matter where you are. So yeah,
Of
Chell,
course.
shout out to the Bronx. I know you're uh, here somewhere,
Yes, sir. The
but
boogie down.
so I honestly kind of similar to Owen. I haven't really experienced like any crazy like explicit racism, right? Um, but I have had an encounter with a cop one time, and I don't know if she's in the chat, Julie Bean. Shout out to Julie Bean, but she was there with me when it happened. Um, so I was coming out of work from summer camp, and I decide to um, just like any regular New Yorker, swipe my Metro card so I can get through to take the train. So she goes first, she swipes her Metro card, she gets on the other side of the turnstile, and then I go next. And as soon as I go, some police officer comes up to me and goes, "Yo, you don't think I just saw what you did?" And at that point, I'm like, I'm not too scared, to be honest, because there's so many people around. But I kind of was surprised, shocked at what this police officer wanted, because I had done nothing wrong. Um, but he told me that he saw me jump over the turnstile. And if you're not from New York, jumping over the turnstile means you didn't pay with your Metro card, and you can get in trouble for that. So the police officer that was right in the corner, that was watching me from an angle that he watched Julia, um, told me that I jumped over the turnstile when I clearly didn't. So for about like 5 to 10 minutes, I was kind of arguing with him, not heated or anything, but trying to explain to him that I clearly just swiped my MetroCard and went through. But he just couldn't believe me. He just claimed that he saw me jump over it. And so he goes, okay, let's check your MetroCard, because there's a way to find out how recently you use your MetroCard. So if he swipes it and sees that it was used like, I don't know, 2 minutes ago, then obviously he would know that I
You're
used
good.
it just now. Yeah. So he did that and then found out that I had used it 2 minutes ago, and then comes back to me and goes, oh, like my bad. I just wanted to make sure, So clearly that was just a very confusing moment for me because the guy was right there, like he clearly saw me go in. um and I have a light complexion too, like I've had people from a distance say that I can pass as a white person, not too many people, especially when I got my clean fade going, but some
It's been a
people
while,
have,
huh?
I mean, come on, you know how it is.
Yeah, quarantine
Mm.
days.
But even me, who's Hispanic and have a light complexion, I have to even deal with police officers, um, like assuming that I committed a crime and whatnot. So for me, that was just insane. It was my first time actually dealing with that, so it resonates with me significantly just because I had never experienced anything like that beforehand. But yeah, I mean, things like that happen all the time here in the Bronx, Like I have friends that's happened to. The Bronx is mostly Hispanic and blacks, so uh it's just sad to see that every day, living in that every day. Um but yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I have to say to that. Um it's unfortunate, and I actually have an experience with Dan that I know he's gonna talk about in a few, but
Hmm.
it's
Yeah, we'll
just
get
it's
there.
just
Yeah, we
it's
definitely
just it's
will.
just in, it's just incredible, that I can't um just walk and go about my normal routine without being um profiled. So yeah.
Right. It's just unfortunate to see that there's just such a difference because, as you said, you are of a lighter complexion. So there are probably some benefits to that. Imagine if you were a little bit darker, as some Dominicans could be, as some
Mm,
Dominicans pretty much appear as black
I
as
mean,
I
some
look.
Dominicans are black, right?
Pretty much,
Yeah,
yeah.
yes, pretty
I mean, my
straight
much.
up.
family, yeah, my entire family pretty much.
So imagine if you were one of those over a subway fare. As Fishy said in the chat, a single subway fare. But I have my
And
own.
it's something
Mm,
it's scary to worry about that, especially you're lucky that you're in a group of people, but it's hard to imagine the perspective of like a black person, um, on 85th Street and 10 p.m. or something like
mhm.
that, right?
Yeah,
Nobody
yeah, yeah.
around,
Yeah, yeah.
86th Street. But
Yes.
you know,
I was lucky it was prime time, and there were a lot of people there. I didn't feel as scared, but yeah, under those circumstances, that might have been different without witnesses, right? Um, yeah.
Right,
back to you, boss.
right,
My bad.
right, definitely no, not a problem whatsoever. So I have my own story to tell. Um, as I said, I never really experienced anything incredibly overt. I haven't had someone basically hold a gun to me or anything as serious or severe as that. Nothing as disgusting as that. However, like all the gentlemen here, I attended the College of the Holy Cross. Go Satyrs. But
Go Satyrs.
yep, Satyrs roll. But I was driving with Owen here and another friend, another white friend. And Owen just so happened to have a broken taillight because of an incident that happened a little bit earlier that day.
Mhm.
He's We were driving to the mall and then we were going to get the taillight fixed. Owen is pulled over by a cop as we're at the mall. I mean, standard. He is missing the taillight. So just quick check. Oh, hey, your taillight's missing. So the cop proceeds over to do that. And I'm in the back seat. Our white friend is in the passenger side. He's not wearing a seatbelt. I am not wearing a seatbelt. The cop passes over the white friend and turns directly to me after asking about the taillight and says, "Is there any reason why you're not wearing a seatbelt back there?" And I'm like, I mean, I should be wearing my seatbelt. Wear your seatbelts, everybody. But I'm just sitting
Legal.
there. I'm just sitting there like, I mean, I guess I just wasn't wearing it. I mean, I don't know. I don't really have a reason for you. And then the police officer proceeds to ask for our IDs, Owen and I, not our white friend, who is in the passenger side wearing no seatbelt. So basically, if anything happens, we know what's going to happen with him wearing no seatbelt. And clearly, that is insanity that his ID is not taken. He takes our IDs. I honestly think that Owen and I escaped an altercation because he saw the IDs and they were College of the Holy Cross IDs. If it was anywhere else, if we just had a random ID or anything like that, who knows what could have happened. I mean, we see what happens in America nowadays, so Lord knows. That's all I got to say. But
That's crazy, bro.
yeah,
Every time you
it's
tell that
insane.
story, it just gets crazier and crazier to me, man.
It's,
Should have been there, bro.
Every time.
You can't even make it up, dude. You honestly can't make it.
it makes
You can't.
absolutely no sense. So I guess that is my overt story, but I have two other quick tidbits to share. So we were talking last week about how one of our callers was saying how in New England everyone's like, "Oh, like we're woke, we're not racist, like we love black people."
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically it, but there's a real dichotomy there because as Owen was saying before, everyone asked him, "Oh, you're on the football team, right?" And we just be in Worcester. I go to say like Dick's Sporting Goods, or I go to just
Or the barber.
or the barber, or even like a Walmart, and someone's like, "Oh, Holy Cross! Ah, you play basketball there? You run track?" And it's like,
You run track?
no,
Are you a jumper?
no, I do not actually, sir. I am one of the 4 people that are black that do not actually. You know what? I got in
Literally
here
4 in our year.
literally 4 in our graduating class.
That's
5.
nuts.
Pause.
Yeah,
5.
5. So I'm here for my merit. I'm not here to entertain you. I'm here to get my education and then do something bigger with my life. That is why I'm here. That is why I'm before you today. I am not just an athlete. I'm more than just an athlete. I mean, I like playing ball. I think I can hold my own. But why is it that every single time you see a black person wearing a college hoodie, it's like, oh, like I wonder what sport he plays? No, there's no point to that. And then the last thing, just wrapping up and kind of tying it back up to police brutality. There was an incident one time when I was out with friends. I was the only black male out with a bunch of my friends from Holy Cross. The rest of the group was pretty much white and Hispanic. And there was an incident at the club that we were at, and the cops basically came in and shut it down, and it was a frenzy. And I was trying to figure out, hey, where are we supposed to go? What are we supposed to do? So I go to proceed to ask an officer. All of my white friends were saying, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Like, what are you thinking? Like, are you serious? Like, this is chaotic. Like, you don't know what's going to happen to you. And see, that's where I think the perspective is really interesting. I mean, I have to thank my parents for teaching me these lessons and teaching me how to speak to the police. But sometimes that really isn't enough. You never know when there's going to be a power trip. You never know when someone's just like, oh, I just don't really like this guy. Like, he's black. Maybe he might be a threat, something like that. But it's just unfortunate to see that that is the world that we live in, where there's always some sort of apprehension, always some sort of fear. Whereas someone like Feek over here may not ever have to deal with that. His kids may never have to deal with that. And that's my piece.
True. I mean, it's a sad reality. It's, you know, I think one thing that disengages white people from a lot is they feel like they're getting blamed for it. Um, Look, it's of course it's not your fault that you were born who you are, right? Um, However, being born who you are, you're benefiting from a long system and a long trail of um, the putting down of black people and brown people. So it's hard to acknowledge that without feeling that why am I being blamed feeling. For perspective, not everybody who has implicit bias is white, right? Of course.
Of course.
Um, my first personal experience is one Jose loves reminiscing back on. So back in the day, whenever me and Jose would be coming back from cross, often I'd drop him at his place on the way, whether I was driving or if someone in New York was driving with me. And so I'd stop at his house, say what's up to his mom, and I get out. And sometimes I get out and I go back up or go all the way upstairs because I know where his apartment is. And one time I was walking up there and some lady sitting on the stoop next to me as I start walking in, she goes, whoa, hold up. I was like, oh, you good? She was like, wait, are you the landlord? No, I'm just seeing my friend. And she was a little shook. She was like, are you sure? I was like, no, I'm sure. Yeah. And look, like this is a brown skinned lady. Like she didn't mean anything negative by it, right? But it's something that's ingrained into our heads. Like this white guy in the Bronx is probably with the one with the money. Like it's just something, and you have to be able to recognize small things like that as this implicit racism, this internal racism, in order to deal with it in the way that we need to. Something small like that. Another real small one, especially from being up in New England at a PWC. One thing that I definitely got a lot, especially because of my group of friends with a lot of black people, as you can see on the screen. And we hosted a lot of parties back in the day. And oftentimes we'd be sitting around saying, let's throw a party on Friday, right? 421, let's make it happen. And so sure, like Jose texts his people, I text my people outside of the immediate friend group, and we're all saying, come by on Friday, we're going to throw something. And I would say, sadly, one of the most rampant responses I got was, it's not really my kind of party. And that's something that stuck with me. Like, I hate that there's a type of party, right, assigned to a specific group of people. Look, the parties that we threw, yes, they often had the lights out and people were dancing and there was loud music. And again, people were dancing. And a lot of white people on campus weren't about that, right? Like they wanted to be at a party, not to call anybody out, but they wanted to be at a party where, there's a beer pong table in the middle of the party and you can sit around on a couch and just hang out. Whereas a lot of the ones we threw were more like, like express yourself in different ways. And it was sad to just see a lot of people close themselves off to coming and seeing us and seeing their friends because it was a certain type of party that they didn't want to go to, or, they thought they could have other better plans. It's a closed-mindedness that's really rampant on the campus. And it's something that I really didn't do my best to call out when I was there. But especially for the younger viewers out there, my brother's listening right now, be the person to take initiative, make that kind of thing happen. And, do what you can, recognize racism when it happens, whether it's implicit or not, and make that really hard call to call someone out on it. If that hurts your friendship, they're not the kind of person you should be friends with. Right.
Amen.
Amen.
So, there we go. That's my two cents. I'll get back to listening.
Side note. There's a book titled White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. I don't know if the guys in chat have read it, but it speaks about a lot of the specifics that Feek was mentioning. So, if you guys want to inform yourselves or look at different perspectives, definitely give that book a try. I'm gonna try to type it in the chat. for those interested.
Yes,
I
please
know
do.
Ahmad was asking about works that we would recommend, and that's one of them for sure. So to put that out there.
Good looks.
Yeah, and real quick, I just want to talk about just like overall the feeling of the events that have transpired this first half of 2020. It's been somber, sad mood. A lot of people's deaths are being recorded and publicized at the hands of people we expect to protect us, and be watching over us. For those people who are struggling with you know these topics and the ideas that we're talking about and that we're expressing, I just ask you to look at some of the videos. Personally, for me, I hadn't watched the George Floyd video until the first episode of this Chopping It Up series. And like people use this term often, brought to tears. I was literally brought to tears sitting on my couch watching the video because all I could see was my neighbor, family member, someone close to me, pleading to for air to breathe, for their life. And the issue pertaining George Floyd and the officer, it was minuscule compared to his life. And things like that happen a lot. We don't get to see the video. We just see the blurb on the newspaper, or we see the article and it says young black man killed, young black man found hung, young black man found in a ditch or something like that. And I just ask people to take the effort to educate yourselves. I'm learning every day. Sadly, these kinds of things, I've become desensitized to because it happens so often, so frequent. And I just go, wow, someone passed away. But like this stream, whatever you want to call it, these series of episodes have taught me, to do research and to read up and to watch videos and understand, what's going on in this country, and how my people, how my brothers and sisters, my cousins, uncles, whatever, how they're being treated, and you know how sometimes you just don't have a fight at all. So I just I implore people to be more aware. If you see that link on Instagram, on Twitter, whatever, Facebook, WhatsApp, click it. Just read about it. And it doesn't have to be just like stuff on one side of the spectrum. You can, I watched the Candace Owens video. I didn't want to watch it, but those things are informative. People's perspectives are are needed so that we understand where people are coming from, how they view things, how they see things. Every perspective is needed. Every perspective is necessary for us to meet at a common ground, and to solve, the issues that are going on in this country. Um, you know, yeah, I hope that you guys aren't just watching and then just go about your day after the stream. I implore everybody to make an effort to just raise their awareness and inform themselves about what's going on, because there's plenty of things that I discovered and plenty of things that I learned about, that I wouldn't have learned about if it wasn't for us coming together and doing this series of shows. So yeah.
I agree. We can't become complacent. If we become complacent, then everything that we're working for right now will be for nothing. So be consistent, stay passionate, stay loud, and never become complacent because nothing's gonna change if we do. So amen to that. Oh,
Yeah, facts.
Yes, indeed. Oh, thank you so much for that perspective. I mean, I think people can kind of just see the passion in what you're saying and just how difficult it is. I know Asha said There's times that she feels like she's just screaming into the dark abyss, like just pleading, trying to find the answers, trying to seek for when that time will come. When will there be a change? When will there be change in America? That's what we're trying to see. But we're going to open it up the floor to you guys. We've been talking your ears off for a little bit, sharing our perspectives, sharing our personal stories, and everything like that. So if anyone wants to call in and share a personal story, comment, question, concern, perspective, anything like that, !call in, !Discord. You will see how to call in. Feel free. Don't be shy. We had a good amount, and we already had our guests. We had a good amount last week, and we already had our guest speaker so far. So be part of the conversation. I know it's tough, but if you're up for it, we're all ears.
Yeah, if you weren't here last week, we had 5 people call in, and we went for like an hour and 45 minutes. We're not trying to have that happen this time, but we really want to hear your voices. It's kind of what makes this episode important. And we're not sure what we're going to be moving on to next week. So really, if you got something to say, please, make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, whether that be a feeling, an experience, anything that you'd want to share, a question to any of us, more elaboration, whatever it may be, feel free. We got a goated mod that'll make things go out, and yeah, if you have any questions or concerns, let us know. Or you can just type in the chat as well. Like if you have a question, if it's easier for you to address something via chat, that's also fine. I know. Is that Jay Boone Humanities?
I'm assuming that is, bro.
I think that's Jay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's him.
Yeah, I know he was talking about how, or wanted us to elaborate a little bit on how systemic racism has affected our families and the educational system, where we went to school. If you have any questions or, yeah, that was Boone. You have 2 accounts, bro. Damn. They get familiar with Twitch.
Oh my goodness! Wow, this guy is loyal.
I was actually gonna say something about that. Just briefly. I went to Catholic school for from pre-K to 8th grade, and I ended up getting into Regis, which is one of the most prestigious high schools in New York. I went to Regis with Paul, but it was so difficult for me and my friends to be aware of the opportunities that lie ahead, right? The reason I say this is because in the 5th grade, I was actually the Reach program, which is a subset of Regis. I think some people in the chat may know about it. Is a program that kind of helps students with low socioeconomic backgrounds get into good schools, right? So what they do is they reach out to poor neighborhoods and predominantly like Black and Hispanic students in the 5th grade, and try to prepare them and make them aware of the opportunities at hand and try to assist them in that endeavor, so that we can get into good schools and therefore have better opportunities. I can honestly say that without them, like without the help and support that I got from them, there would be like close to 0% chance of me getting into Regis or getting into Holy Cross, and getting some of the opportunities that I got just from going to those schools. So Jay, to speak about that a little bit, so many of my friends didn't get the same luck and the same kind of opportunities that I did, from that program. It's crazy to think about like without a program like that existing to help people like me, God knows where I'd be today. And it's actually outrageous to think about the fact that things like that need to be present in society to help people like me and people like Blouses succeed. So it is sad to see we were lucky to have those chances. Yeah, exactly. It's sad for me to see my friends struggle and my family struggle just because of their skin tone or their ethnic background, etc. So yeah, I mean, look, man, I lived through that struggle. I was lucky enough to uh, get those opportunities via the Reach program. I'm forever grateful to them. But we need more programs like that, in my opinion, that target people in those low socioeconomic um, neighborhoods like the Bronx. We need more programs like that in order to create more opportunities for people. Because without those opportunities, you fall into the same circular pattern that O and Feek uh, talked about in the previous minutes. So definitely, Jay, and I know we all here, like me, you, and O, and Blouses can relate to that because I know you guys, I know where you guys went to school, and um, I
Yeah.
understand the kind of climb that we need to get where we are today. So
To go with that real quick, as Zoljic mentioned, and as Jay Boone mentioned in the chat, our school was essentially a program. Like it allowed students in the inner city to, you know, to information and opportunities that they normally wouldn't get in public schooling. I would never have heard of Holy Cross if I didn't go to Benedict. I'm sure Jared probably the same thing. As a matter of fact, I think my senior year in high school, we planned a visit to Massachusetts, and none of us even knew what the Holy Cross was until the faculty member in charge of our trip told us, "Hey, this is a great school. We have alumni there. They provide a great education um, for young kids in the country, and that's ultimately how we ended up there. So I'm thankful. I'm forever grateful for going to Benedict's, opening my eyes. And you don't really see too many schools like that where it's a Catholic school and it's just all African Americans, people of color. It was insane. Um, it was insane. And part of me thought, oh, when I go to undergrad in college, it's probably going to be similar. Obviously, that was extreme difference, extreme
For real.
contrast.
Yeah.
yeah,
But
Culture shock.
yeah, it's I don't think I'd be who I am without that experience in high school. I don't think I'd be who I am without the experiences at Holy Cross as well. And you know, those 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 avenues are necessary, and I'm a living testament of you know those kind of avenues and those pathways that people can follow.
and
So I'm
and
grateful.
and just another quick shout out to Jay Boone, who's actually working with those young up and coming kids, giving them the knowledge that they need to succeed. And it's one thing to talk about it, and it's another to be about it. So appreciate you, Jay, and all the work you do for real.
Goat.
For real.
The goat,
Yes, goat right
the
there. Dustin
goat.
Smith. Goat.
Like he just said, if it wasn't for his brother Sean, he wouldn't have been there.
Mhm.
People like that,
Me
those
neither.
are people we got to get in this chat moving forward.
Yes, sir. Yes,
The
sir.
ones who did it for us so that we can do it for other people.
Hmm.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Vouch.
indeed. Yes, indeed. I mean, I was looking at something else that he had mentioned in the chat with systemic racism, just to briefly go through that and how his family missed out on generational wealth as a result of it. I mean, I would say that that's a very predominant thing in America as it stands. Like, for example, I know I was scrolling through Twitter, and then John Legend had commented on a different tweet, basically saying that black people are not shown a lot of properties that they qualify for. They want to keep black people in certain spaces, is what he's alluding to. And as we've already discussed, a lot of benefits that are granted for the average American citizen just are not there for us. It's definitely stratified. There's definitely a complete disconnect. And just thinking back to some comments with like the Drew Brees comments about the flag and how we're disrespecting the troops and so on and so forth. And then black athletes mentioning, well, my forefathers fought as well along with yours. And what did they have for it? You have things such as GI Bill, which allows people to have a major launch pad after providing service for our country. And I don't know the percentages. I do not have the statistics in front of me, but I would like to take a strong guess that the amount of white people that have benefited from that versus the amount of black people that have benefited from that is on a crazy scale. There's definitely a major gap there. So just something I want to address really quick.
Well said, brother.
Yes, indeed.
Facts.
Yes, indeed. Well, it looks like we just kind of went through things that were in the chat. Doesn't look like we have any callers or anything like that. So I think that's a good place for us to wrap. We've exhausted our topics. We've given some food for thought for the future. Don't take these episodes and in one shot. Like, really try to digest them. If you can take one thing from what was discussed and kind of just hone in on that one thing and say, that was a pretty solid point, or I never really thought about something that way. We hope that that's what you do. And then you take that and try to incorporate it into your daily life. Try to think, hey, what can I do? We can all do something. There's nobody in here in this chat that's watching this stream that can't help make a difference. The difference starts with you. So you got to look in the mirror and see what you can do. So I'm going to throw it to my other hosts to see if they have anything that they want to share or say as we ride out. And then,
Yeah. I've got just real quick. Thank you all again. I know I'm a freaking so repetitive saying this, but I do really appreciate everyone in the chat sharing their thoughts. We're saying things and also learning things at the same time, so it's very beneficial for us. Also keep in mind that, chopping it up, we're gonna address a lot of different kinds of issues. We're gonna address issues that are prevalent, to women. I know we're gonna have a sexual assault um, episode sometime in the future, and just, prevalent topics, and also not so prevalent topics. I'm sure we'll have episodes that are a lot more lighthearted, and if we want to just talk some, I don't know, some sports or talk some philosophy, I'm sure that we'll come up with some interesting things for the future. So definitely thank you all for the support. Without you guys, like, this would be nothing. And yeah, till next time.
See you guys. Appreciate all the viewership, the support, the love, sticking it out. Wouldn't be here without you guys supporting us, right? What would Chopping It Up be? Thank you.
For sure. Last but not least, Daniel gets to talk. It's past my bedtime, so I just appreciate everybody else sticking around on here. 38 people right now, 40 to 50 people in the last hour.
43, bro.
It's a blessing to see everybody trying to contribute here. Keep talking to the chat, keep showing up. We'll be doing a whole host of different topics. I won't be there half the time, probably. I have nothing influential to say on, some of our topics, but glad I could be honored to be invited, as they say.
Hey, part of the fam, man. Part of the fam.
Of
So
yes, indeed.
Rafik,
Yes,
goats.
indeed. And just to wrap, I mean, thank you to each and every one of you, from the people that work so hard behind the scenes, my hosts right here, everyone in the chat, everyone that's watching that may not have chatted. Like, without you guys, there, like O said, there would be no Chopping It Up. What would it be? It'd just be, who knows what. We're just gonna leave it at that. So, like, who even knows? So, as was said before, we're gonna really be switching up the topics. This was a really important topic for us to start on. It's really been something we've been discussing in private, and we figured, why not bring the conversation to the public? Why not go with it I see a major question in the chat. What time next week? I think we can run it back.
Hey.
Wednesdays, 8 p.m. I think that could be us. Why not? In the chat, if you
all
like to
know.
see that, put a 1 in the chat, please.
Also, if you guys ever have any suggestions about what you wanna, what you want the content to be, also feel free to suggest some things. So we're definitely open to everyone's thoughts and opinions.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, 8
Yo.
p.m. Eastern time.
Oh yes, Eastern
yeah.
time. Major distinction there. So that's 8 Eastern. What's that?
My
7
boy
Central.
Feek, my
That's
boy
at
Feek,
5 Pacific, 7 Central.
my boy Feek has a curfew, so we can't make it too late.
Yeah, nah, it's a little bit past his
me, bro.
bedtime.
I'm trolling, bro.
So
I'm not.
Go to sleep right now, bro. You're on his bed right now. You're about to hop on the
For
pillow
sleep
right
right now. Sword, I heard him snore just now, bro.
Yeah, bro. He got the pillow. You can't get the pillow, but it's on his right side right now.
Yeah, you just can't see it in the camera. But that'll be it for
All
us,
right,
guys.
boys.
Yep, that's a wrap. That's another great episode of Chopping It Up. We will see you guys next week. We might put out a poll, maybe see what topic you want to see. Maybe we'll do one of them Instagram things, something like that. So be sure, if you're following us, to check your Instagram stories, take a look at them. You'll never know when some great content from Chopping Up is coming out. But as always, it's all love on this side. I will see you guys next week. Thank you. Goodbye.